Hi, I'm Lisa from Recreated Designs, and today I am popping in to give you some of my very best DIY tips for painting cabinets. So a lot of people ask questions all the time at the shop about the best way to paint cabinets, and I want to show you some tips today if you're about to undertake this. So one of the first things I want to talk to you about is the brush you're going to use. So typically I do not recommend rolling paint on your cabinets. Typically rollers will leave like an orange peel effect or a stippled effect, so that's not necessarily what you want on your cabinets. If you do want to roll them for quickness sake to get it on quickly, I would still advise to roll it on and then take a brush and smooth it out before you let that paint dry. So that's always an option. If you're going to paint your cabinets, there are a couple types of brushes that you want to be aware of. So if you use a natural bristle brush like this one, or a wall brush, the bristles have a lot of texture to them, so they're going to give you a lot of brush strokes in your paint and on your cabinets. So if you don't mind brush strokes, you don't mind texture, you're fine to use whatever brush you'd like. If you'd like a smoother finish when you're brushing on your paint, you definitely want to get yourself a high quality brush. When the bristles are super fine, that helps a lot with brush strokes. So the finer the bristles, they almost feel like makeup brushes. The finer the bristles, the better your finish will be once you start painting your cabinets. So there's a lot of really great brushes. These ones are Stallmeister brushes and they have super fine bristles. So they're what I like to use when I'm painting cabinets. All right, so let's get into the cabinet painting and I'll give you some of my best tips. All right, so you want to paint your cabinet, and here's my door that we're going to use for this. So this is a wood door, and I will show you the bonding primer, how to use that if you do not have a wood door. Here is the cabinet door that we are going to work with for this project. And this cabinet door is taken off of its hinges. So you can either paint your cabinets while they're attached to your frames, or you can take the doors off. Whatever you feel most comfortable with is what you can go ahead and do. If you want to leave your cabinets hanging, you can go ahead and take some painter's tape and just wrap that around the hinges so that you don't get any paint on them. You do, however, want to take out any of your hardware. So even if you're going to use the same hardware, take it out because you'll get a much more professional finish with your painting if you take this out. Now, I'm going to use the back of this cabinet. So the first thing you want to do with your cabinet is give it a really good clean on both sides. I love to use the TSP Alternative by Fusion. It cleans really well, and you want to get into all these little grooves, everything on your cabinets. If I flip it over, the same. You want to make sure not only to clean the big surfaces, but to clean in here. There are a lot of great cleaning products out there though, so just make sure that it's suitable for paint, like the TSP Alternative by Fusion. Now, if you're painting wood, you can go ahead and give this a quick scuff sand, and then you're ready to start painting. If your cabinets are melamine or thermofoil. So thermofoil is when you have a cheaper particle board on the inside and they are wrapped with like a plastic coating. A lot of new kitchens are thermofoil now. And I'm going to show you on the back of our door here. So if you have cabinets like that, your paint may not stick to it. So I like to use the Fusion Ultra Grip. This is just a bonding primer. So you can use any sort of bonding primer. You don't want a color blocking primer because we're not worried about color block or bleed. You want something that's going to bond it. So when you're using a bonding primer, you want to use the exact same brush to put on your bonding primer as you're going to do for your paint, because whatever happens in this layer is going to show through to all of your paint layers. So take your time, do a really nice job on your bonding primer, because you don't want to leave a whole lot of brush strokes or those will show through to your paint after. So I'm going to put some bonding primer on the back here. I don't necessarily need it on this cabinet because it's wood, but I want to show you what it looks like when you're using it in case you have cabinets where you will need it. So you do not need a very thick coat of this. And you can see I just went ahead and poured some of it on. So I am just going to put a thin layer all around this door. And I want to make sure to cover my whole surface with the bonding primer. And I've got lots here, so I can just keep moving it around. Again, you want to take your time, do a really nice job with this layer. It doesn't need to be a thick coat, and you don't want to leave any globs like this because, like I said, that'll show through to your paint layer. So just make sure you get all of those little streaks and globs. So I'm going to go ahead, this up here. Now the trick with bonding primer is that you have to let it rest. Excuse me. You have to let it rest for 12 to 24 hours. So even though this will be dry very quickly, I need to leave it on here for at least a minimum of 12 hours. I try and leave it for 24 if it's a really slick surface. And what's happening during that time is that bonding primer is adhering to the surface you're putting it on. So even though it's dry, just remember you have to leave it on there for that minimum 12 hours so that it bonds to that surface, and then you can go ahead and paint. So basically a bonding primer makes any surface paintable. Okay, so you can see this is going to dry clear when it dries, and then I'll be ready to paint. Don't forget though, this is a wood cabinet, so I wouldn't necessarily need it on this cabinet, but I wanted to show you what it would look like if you do need it on your cabinet. So if you have wood, you do not need to put the primer on first, and I can just go ahead and paint this. I've gone ahead and cleaned this, and the last thing I want to do before I'm going to paint is to give it a quick little scuff sanding. And no matter what type of door you have, whether it's melamine, thermofoil, wood, you want to give it a scuff sanding. So this is some gritty paper, it's about a 180, and I am just going to give this a quick scuff sanding. You want to make sure and get into the grooves. Now when I say scuff sanding, you shouldn't be breaking into a sweat. This is just a quick little sanding to give the surface a little bit of grit to it. You can use either sandpaper or you can use a sanding block if you find that easier. The other thing you want to do is give your sides of your door a scuff sanding as well. Especially if your doors are off the hinges, this is easier to do. Okay, so now that I've given it a scuff sanding, I'm just going to take some damp paper towels and wipe this off just to get any of that dust off. There you go. And you can see on my paper towel that a lot of that the scuff sanding got a little bit of, just broke up that slick surface. So something that you're going to have to decide when you do paint your cabinets, whether it's a bathroom cabinet or laundry room or kitchen, is whether you are going to do both sides of your cabinet or if you want to only do the outside. If you are only doing the outside of your cabinet, you want to do the outside surface and you want to do all of your sides. But you do not then need to do the back surface. If you want to do the whole thing, then you'll just paint the whole door. Okay. When you are painting your cabinets, you always want to leave your most visible surface to paint last. This is because this is what people are going to see. So if you're going to have any paint spill over, you want to be able to get a nice smooth surface here. So typically when I'm painting, I will start with the sides of the door, and then I will do the grooves, the flat area, and end with, excuse me, my most visible side. So I'm going to use this beautiful blue paint here. that I've got, and you want to make sure that you are using the appropriate sized brush. So I would not be able to use a brush this size to go along my edges because I would just get a lot of paint pushed around, but I can use something small like this and just go right along my edges. Okay. Now you don't have to worry, you are always going to need 2 coats, so if you miss anything the first time, you'll be able to pick that up the second time. I am going to go ahead and do this side. Now I do want to show you before I do the final sides, if you are not going to paint the back of your door, it is really easy to get some of that paint over on the back. So what I like to do is take some painter's tape, and it can be however thick you've got. And I like to put it right along the edge of the inside of the door. So let me pick it up here so you can see. So it is half sticking over and half on the back of the door. So I'm going to make sure that that goes nice and tight down there. I want to make sure it's nice and stuck. And now when I paint that, it will keep my paint from going to the back of the door. So I can paint along there now. I can run my brush along, and I won't have to worry about getting paint on the back of my door. So that's just a quick and easy tip to keep the paint off the back of your door. Okay. And I'm going to do my final side over here. Okay, so all of my sides are done now. Now you can see I did go over on the top. That's okay. You're going to have enough time to work with this that you don't have to worry about that yet. But I'm going to take some of my paint, and I want to make sure to get into all of those little nooks and crannies now on the inside. And this is exactly why I do this surface last, because you can see I'm getting over on that. And if I had already painted this, I would have a whole bunch of things to fix up now. So I'm going to paint all my little inside grooves here. Okay, so I've got all those little inside grooves. I've made sure I've got the paint all inside, and I'm just smoothing it out. Now, this is a pretty narrow spot, so I can actually keep working with the same brush, and I can put my paint right along there, and I want to go very lightly. I'm almost dragging my brush as opposed to pushing it. If I were pushing it, you'd see the bristles bending like this. But I am almost dragging it along, and that's what smooths it out. Now the other thing I want to show you, your doors will typically, especially if they're wood, have these joint seals here. So you can see on my door here, and that's what I use to know which direction I want to paint. So I painted from this joint here to this one, and I need to do the same up here. So even though I'm putting my paint on sideways like that just to cover it, when I smooth it, I want to go in the direction of that panel. Okay, now that the Ultra Grip is dry on this side that we put it on, I'm going to show you how to put your paint on. So you want to start by doing your sides first, like I said on the other side, and we're going to go ahead and paint this side now. Again, you want to leave the most visible areas for last. So I'm going to start with my paint here. I want to put it into all those little nooks and crannies first. So I'm going right along here. I'm going to put it in all these little spots. I want to make sure I get it tight into those corners. Okay. And then I want to do our larger areas. So since this area is a little bit smaller than this, I'm going to start with these on this side. And you can see again that the joints are here and here. So I am just going to put my paint on however I want it to get it on, whatever's easiest. Put it up to that joint. And then again, I'm going to I'm not even pushing my brush, I'm just pulling it along to smooth out any of those brush strokes that might have been in the paint or any little globs, anything like that. So I'm going to move down and do this end. And again, this is why we do this first, because you see I've gotten it over there, but that's okay. Now I can smooth that out. So I'm going to do this. Again, get my paint on however I need to, and smooth it out with my brush before I walk away and let it dry. To do our ends here. Now this particular door has one of these little things on. I can't get it off, so I'm actually just going to paint over this one. So get my paint on here. I want to go nice right up against that joint. Make sure you've got all your edges, and then just pull my brush along. Again, you can see I'm not pushing on it, just pulling it along to smooth that out. Okay, and then to do my last, I'm going to do this side. I want to make sure I've got all my edges. The trick is to not use a lot of paint. You are better off doing just enough paint to get the coverage than big thick layers. The thicker it is, the more brush strokes you will have. So now that I've got that, I'm just going to pull that along, and it's all nice and smooth. So the last thing we're going to do is this nice big area here. Okay, so to do this area, I'm going to use my same paintbrush because this is not a huge door, just to get my paint on. And again, however I want to get that on. Oh, there's a little, you can see there's a little particle in my paint, so I'm just going to take that off. There we go. Get my paint on. Okay, and this is where I could switch to this large brush if you've got one. Just push it right into that corner, and again, I'm just going to drag it along. This is going to give you a beautiful stroke-free finish. And it doesn't take long to do this. It's as quick as that. Like I said, if you get any little bits in your corner, you can just take your dry brush and just tap it in the corner, and that'll get any of those little paint accumulations out. I don't really see too many, so we are good. I can leave this to dry now, and then I'll be back to show you what the second coat looks like. Okay, now that we have the first coat of paint on our door and it's completely dry, it's time to put the second coat on. And you want to do the second coat in the same pattern and manner that we did the first. So I'm going to start with a little bit of my blue paint. Again, I can go over the sides. Okay, I want to make sure those are completely covered. And if your door is hanging and you haven't taken it off, one way to get in to do this side where your hinges would be is to use a very small kid's brush or artist brush so that you can get that inside side here where your hinges would be. So we've got our outside done. I'm going to use same brush, same way we did this last time. I'm going to do all of these little inside groove areas because we want to save that nice big spot for the last. And you can see that 2 coats is going to be enough for this door. This paint is going to cover really well. As far as what paint you use, it's really personal preference. I really like Fusion mineral paint for doors, especially if they're nice and smooth. You can also use Annie Sloan chalk paint. I love it too. You have a little more freedom. It's a little more versatile, but there are lots of great options out there. Okay, so now that I've done this and I've got all those little areas, I am ready to start. And you can see I'm just checking to make sure. Okay, so I'm ready to start this side. Again, I only want to go to the joint. I want to get my paint on right to that joint spot. And this is going to help to give you a really natural look if you use the joints that are already there, so that it looks like your paint was always there. So I've got my paint on. I'm very lightly going to smooth it. Again, remember, I'm just dragging my brush along. If you see, I don't know if you can see, but there's a couple little pieces of just debris in my door there. So I'm going to take it out, touch that up, and then just drag right over it again. Okay. I'm going to do my other end here. Again to the joint, cover it all with paint, and just smooth it out like that. Okay. Smooth that side, and my final edge here. Getting little bits of debris in here now, so I just want to watch that I don't get those in my paint. Sometimes the edge of your can will just have little pieces of dried paint, and that's what's happening here. Okay, so before I do that middle area, I just want to check if there's any little like corner blobs that I need to get out while my paint is still wet, so I can fix up any of those spots. And if you have to go back over it, just make sure, again, you go all the way from end to end. It's tempting to just touch something up and go like that and leave it, but then you're going to get brush marks, so just smooth it out again. Okay, now the last thing I want to do is my big area here. Get my paint on. And you can see how well this paint is covering. So it's covering up all those little areas that I kind of missed the first time. Get my paint on. And again, because I want this big area to be nice and smooth, I'm just going to take my big brush, just drag it along and smooth that out. I can double check that there are no little areas that maybe went over the edge. No little pieces, looks all good. So I can let this dry. Now, if you're using a paint that has a top coat built in, then this is all you need to do, and you can leave it and hang your doors back up or let them dry. If you choose to put a top coat on this, you can absolutely do that. Check out my video about how to get nice smooth finish for top coats without bubbles and things. You'll want to check that video out if you want to put an extra durable top coat on this for protection, especially if you've got young kids or you've got a high traffic kitchen. You'll want to do an extra top coat. If you don't, you're great to leave it like this, especially if you're using an acrylic or that kind of paint with a top coat built in. Then you can just leave it as this. I hope these tips have helped you so that you can paint your cabinets and get a beautiful finish. Like I said, if you need to put a top coat on or you have other DIY projects you're working on, check out my other videos. And if you love upcycling, or chic cycling as I like to call it, be sure to check out the Recreated Designs Insider Club, where every month you get a DIY project, a mini class just like this. You get a community, a private community of fellow creatives, and all kinds of good stuff. A live Q&A with me every month. So you can check that out at recreateddesigns.com, and then just click Insiders Club. Remember to subscribe and like, and I will see you again soon with another how-to video to make sure your painting projects go smoothly.